welcome back to the MMA Training Bible's Guide to Developing Unstoppable Endurance in 3 months. I'm Dr. Jason Gillis. In the first half of this course, we learned all about the science of MMA, and in the second half, we've been applying that science to design an individualized and periodized training plan that's going to enhance your endurance. And so far, we've been working together to plan the big training phases across your fight plan. We forecasted training volume and intensity. We planned the individual training subphases and weeks and the training difficulty. And now, in this session, session 10, we're going to program individual training sessions. What I want to focus on, and really the goal, is teaching you how to program individual training sessions across your entire fight plan. So first, we're going to start off with a little recap, make sure we're on the same page with the training plan that we've been working through, and then we're going to talk about programming training sessions across all of the all aspects, all big phases of the fight plan. And again, we're also going to talk about the recovery weeks, the warm-ups, and the cool-downs. So let's recap quickly. You should have something that looks like this, whereby you've scheduled your fight along with your big training phases, along with training volume and intensity, and you've also scheduled your sub-phases and your training weeks and the training difficulty across them. So the next thing that we want to do is schedule in the days that you're actually going to train. Again, this is totally up to you to determine. I can't tell you what days you should be training. Oftentimes it depends upon what MMA specific skill sessions you're getting at your gym. And that dictates when you can fit in your endurance training, your resistance training, agility, and all that other stuff. But I do recommend that you only plan 2 weeks. So you're only from now going to be planning the next 2 weeks of your training. You don't need to pick what days you're going to be training on. You don't need to pick exactly what you're going to be doing beyond 2 weeks, because it's very difficult to program beyond 2 weeks. Our lives are complicated. Things come up, family commitments, school, work, whatever it is for you, it's just too hard. And when people do plan beyond that, I see that they have to change things, so it's really a waste of time. So please just plan 2 weeks in advance. And then the other thing that you want to do in this step is you want to schedule your testing dates for the MMA Training Bible's testing battery. And it should happen every 6 to 12 weeks. So all you're doing now is you're just picking the days that you're going to train. And so here, what we've done is we've just mapped the days that we're going to train. You can see this fighter is training on Monday, pretty much every day, except some days are going to be very low intensity and other days are going to be a little bit higher. What I recommend is you try to follow the lines that we've already sketched out. And when you do have a training day that's a little bit higher compared to the others in that week, make sure it's followed by a low recovery day or a low intensity recovery day. So you can see that here. You're training at medium to high training difficulty on Monday, and then you take a day off or have a very low intensity workout the next day. Build up slowly, get it up to the intensity that's the height for that week, recovery day. You can see this pattern mimicked here as well. Monday is going to be the day when they're going to be training at high intensity. So the next day you should train at a lower intensity and then progress in this fashion. So it's up to you to identify which days you're going to be training. Again, you see this fighter's training every day, and if you're going to be fighting in 3 months, then that's probably recommended, unless of course you haven't been training every day. So if you're only training maybe for the last month or two once a day, then this isn't going to work for you, and I would ask that you strongly consider the 3-month fight timeline. So what I want to do now is just give you an idea of what this looks like over the course of your whole fight plan. Now, again, I'm recommending that you shouldn't do this more than 2 weeks in advance. So for you, you should just be scheduling this block and this block. And then when you get to week 2, the end of week 2, then you should schedule weeks 3 and 4. But this is generally what it looks like. And I just want to point out a couple things here. You should always, again, as best practice, when you have your training day, you see that the difficulty of this training day is very high on the Monday, and then the next day it's going to be very low difficulty, and then you build up, recovery. Hard day, recovery. And then hard day, recovery, build up, build up. So that's the format that I think that you should follow. I think it works for a lot of fighters. And then you can see generally how this flows, this pattern flows. You always have a recovery day after your highly difficult training days. And that, of course, you also have your recovery weeks as well, which are of critical importance in training. Assuming that you're training, probably the most important part of training is actually not training and allowing yourself to recover. The other thing I wanted to mention here is you got to book in your MMA Training Bible testing battery, or whoever is doing your testing. Make sure you do it at the beginning of your fight plan. and then every 6 weeks thereafter. The tough thing about the 3-month plan is that it doesn't have a lot of time to dedicate to testing. So I'm going to recommend that you do a test at the beginning and then a test at the end of this fight plan. If you were really curious, you might do another test maybe somewhere around here, maybe week 10 after your recovery week. But know that that's going to take up a whole training session as well. So that's why I'm an advocate of maybe just pre-post testing. So one here at the beginning and then another one at the end. What we want to do now is go and identify your endurance training objectives. Now, if you remember, endurance in mixed martial arts is best developed in phases, and in my view, it starts with aerobic oxidation, and that transitions into aerobic glycolysis, which transitions into anaerobic glycolysis, and then finally, at the end of your fight camp, you're focusing on the ATP PCR system. Another reason why this program is not suitable for beginners is because it doesn't focus on aerobic oxidation really at all. It just gets you in the mid to late fight specific phase when you're focusing on maybe a little bit of aerobic glycolysis, but you're primarily anaerobic for this whole fight plan. And that can lead to overtraining if you're constantly focusing on high intensity training in itself. So again, most fighters, mixed martial arts, they should be having a very large base of aerobic oxidation. That's why I put it here at the base of the pyramid. It really is the foundation. And know that you don't get this in the 3-month plan, or really in the 4-month plan. You just don't have time to focus on it. So I'm assuming that you've already have developed a good aerobic base. So you're going to be just sliding into the upper part of this pyramid. So let's show you what this looks like. So if we're scheduling in our performance factors for endurance training, we know during the fight-specific prep phase we're going to be focusing on aerobic glycolytic and buffering workouts. As we get into the fight camp, our training objectives, anaerobic glycolytic and the ATP PCR system and buffering workouts. And then we transition as we get to the end of the fight camp and the taper into maintenance workouts. The reason why we're doing maintenance, again, is because any training that we do here, this close to the fight, probably won't present, the adaptation thereof probably won't present until after the fight happens. So this turns into a maintenance period a couple weeks out from the fight. And then as we get into the taper and we move to the transition, then it really turns into recovery workouts, and the transition period can really get longer if you've had an injury or so. So these are all just general timelines that we're describing here. So that's one thing there. The other thing is actually picking your workouts. So I want to show you how to do that now. I've already taken the liberty of filling in some workouts to show you how easy it is. So you see here, this is what this fighter is going to be starting, let's say, next week. They're choosing 5 to 6 times, 2 minutes on, 7 minutes off with a 1-minute build-up. And then let's see how they progress. 5 to 6 times, 2 minutes on, 7 minutes off, 1-minute build-up. It's going to be a little bit more specific here for mixed martial arts activities. As we progress here to the second week, 5 to 6 times, 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, 1-minute build-up, running. And then 2 to 3 times, 5 minutes on, 1 minute off. That's a difficult workout. That's your fighter's drill there. And then we can see here how we're progressing 6 to 8 times, 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off, 1-minute build-up. So what you're doing here is you're looking, saying, okay, we're in the fight-specific period. We're doing a developmental sub-phase with developmental training weeks, and we want to focus on aerobic glycolytic and buffering style workouts. So where do we get these from? So let me give you a little recap of what that is. So let's go all the way back up, and I'll walk you through them here. But we're not focusing on the general preparatory phase, so all those workouts are immediately gone. You're not going to include any of those. The fight-specific phase, what you can do here is you can just follow this guide. You can use these workouts to target anaerobic glycolytic PCR resynthesis during the early fight-specific and mid. Same with these, early to mid. Same with these, early to mid. And you can use these workouts from mid to late. And all you're doing here is you're just taking these example workouts and slotting them in and making sure that you're progressing from the ones up top to the ones down at the bottom. Don't do these in the early phase and these in the late phase. I'd like to see you starting up here and then progressing down here. And you can include the fighter's drill wherever you like. I know at my old team, we used to do this mostly on Saturdays. So maybe see if your coach or your training team has something comparable, but I guess you're probably going to get this no matter what. So that's the fight specific phase. And now we move into fight camp. It's the exact same pattern. You use these types of workouts in the early fight camp, and then as you move through the fight camp, then you use these types of workouts. And then again, you can include the fighter's drill there. You can see the the metabolic targets here as well. So all you're doing is you're just going through these workouts from top to bottom, just picking which ones that you want to implement. And I do, again, suggest, can't stress it enough, start from the top here and then go down to the bottom. Here the fight camp lasts 2 weeks. Now recall that the objective is maintenance during the last 2 weeks of the fight camp and into the taper. And so you're not going to be seeing a lot of physiological adaptations for your fight from this training. So it becomes about maintaining high intensities and taking a lot of rest. And so that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing rest intervals of up to 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. But the intensity is going to be very high. You're training for about 30 seconds, sprinting for about 20 to 30 seconds here. So you can choose these mid to late fight camp. This is one that you could do early fight camp as well. If we continue on here, we're going to find ourselves in the taper, and the same principle applies. We're going to be working out at a high intensity, and we're going to be having a very long rest interval, and the whole purpose is just to try to dissipate fatigue from reducing volume, try to maintain our intensity. And so you can see the phase of training here, early, mid to late specific workouts. You could include this in the taper. I'm not a big fan of it, but I've seen some fighters do it. They do it for psychological reasons. I've seen some fighters use very high number of rounds, very close to training, 7 minutes, or 7 times 3 to 5 minute rounds with 1 minute rest. I worry that that's going to build up too much fatigue before your fight. You may not be able to dissipate it. So, but there are certain psychological benefits to it. So it's up to your coach. It's up to you. Identify what works for you. I'm not going to tell you what you should be doing here. And then we move into the transition, and the general view on the transition is you do a lot of unstructured activities early in the transition and then more structured activities as you move through the transition. So it's going to be general physical activity, basketball, squash, whatever you like to do in the early phase right after your fight. And then as you move through the transition, then you should start focusing on more structured workouts, 4 to 6 times, 5 minutes on, 2 minutes off sort of thing. And then I've also given you recovery workouts here because recovery workouts are meant to be done during your recovery weeks, so you can slot these in here as you like. And then I've also given you warm-ups that you should be doing before specific types of energy systems are worked. So here, if you're just working general total body aerobic type movements, then do this warm-up. If you're targeting anaerobic glycolytic systems, then do this warm-up. If you're targeting the ATP-PCR system, then do these types of warm-ups. And of course, cool downs are good. Make sure you include those in your workout as well. So let's go back to the Excel document and let's slot some of these workouts in. I already have, but I want to just give you a little flavor for what it might look like over the course of your whole fight plan. So we've already went over a couple of these workouts here, but you can see they progress, starting off with 5 to 6 times, 2 minutes on, 7 minutes off. And then we move into the end of the phase, 7 to 8 times, 90 seconds on, 5 minutes off here. So we're moving more into the anaerobic glycolytic sections. And then we've got the recovery workouts here, 10 to 20 minutes of activity, you see. And then we get into the shock. We're starting to focus on buffering in the ATP-PCR system and anaerobic glycolytic here. 8 to 10 times, 60 seconds on, 4 minutes off for the first shock week. 4 to 8 times, 30 seconds on, 2 minutes off. We probably have a different workout here. 4 to 8 times, 30 seconds on, 2 minutes off. It's about the same. And then as we get into the last week, types of workouts, 7 to 10 times, 20 seconds on, 2 minutes off, 30 seconds build up, MMA specific movements. And then we get into the developmental. We're going to see some progression here. Let me move over. Right about there. 10 times, 15 seconds on, 1.5 minutes off. 15 times, 10 seconds on, 1.5 minutes off. You see how the duration is falling. 15 times, 5 minutes on, 1 minute off. We get over here. 7 to 10 times, 30 seconds on, 5 minutes off. These last 2 weeks are about maintenance. And as we get into the taper, it's really about dissipating fatigue. So we're going to see 7 to 10 times, 30 seconds on. Whoops, missed that one. 30 seconds on, 5 minutes off, 4 minutes build up. We keep on going through here. 4 to 5 times, 20 seconds on, 10 minutes off, 4 minutes build up. So the big focus here is maintaining your intensity, reducing training volume, which is shown right here. And then as we get into the transition, we see a lot of unstructured activity in the very beginning, and then we'll scroll over here, and then we see a little bit more structured activity here at the end of the transition. 4 to 6 times, 5 minutes on and 2 minutes off. Okay, let's summarize what we've covered here. You should feel comfortable programming workouts across all aspects of the fight plan. That includes the fight-specific prep phase, the fight camp, the taper, and the transition. And of course, this includes recovery weeks, warm-ups, and cool-downs. Now, I know this can be a little bit confusing, so what I've done to try to make things easier on you is I've taken all of the workouts that we've talked about, I've categorized them according to the phase that they should fall in, whether it's early, mid, or late, or whether it's the taper, the transition, or whatever. All of them. I've taken them and put them in a document, a PDF, I've uploaded it, and you should be able to download that document in the download section. So you can download it, print it off, and use that as a quick reference guide when you're programming across your fight plan. So I hope that makes it easier for you. Also, this Excel example that I've been working through, I've taken that document in its entirety and I've also uploaded that. So you should be able to download that and use it as an example. But remember, it's just an example. The whole point of undergoing these last 10 sessions was to understand the principles so you can program your very own individualized training plan that's going to enhance your performance, not someone else's performance. So that's it for me in the MMA Training Bible. I hope that you learned something and drew a distinction or two, but remember, you can keep on coming back to this stuff over and over and over again. There's a lot of different courses offered by the MMA Training Bible, so I look forward to working with you again in the future. But until then, take care.